and welcome to another episode of Design Divas. I am Pavitra Sriprakash from Shilpa Architects, and I'm here with our founder, Sheila Sriprakash, to talk about everything architecture. And in today's episode, we decided to talk about architecture and sustainability in India. What inspired you to start taking up sustainability as part of the projects?
Actually, Pavitra, it was a necessity that I, tumbled into cost-effective architecture. And I did that because when I was building my own office, I had 20,000 rupees, and I had the land. So I had to build some space for myself within that money, so that I could operate my office from there. So, and the constraints that were given to me by my father was that I should not destroy the garden.
Right.
So within the trees, among the trees, I created this kind of a structure which was about 400 square feet. So when you convert it as a square foot rate, it comes to about 50 rupees per square foot was all that was left for me to do a structure. So it was very challenging, and I wanted to use wire cut bricks.
Right.
Because I was in love with bricks as a material. So with that and with a load bearing structure, I started building our office, our first office, and they were actually 4, squares which was staggered to accommodate the trees, and each square one was the studio, the other was a discussion area, the third was a reception space, and the fourth was my den,
Right.
as I called it. So, each space was exactly 10 feet by 10 feet. So it was a very small office. So, but it was a beautiful office. I understood that the space was very tight, and therefore I opened out the office into the garden. So I borrowed a lot of the garden experience into the building. So that way I was able to achieve, the lacuna of space. And after that, I kind of had to work on it. It had a truncated pyramid structure over it. I wanted a skylight to be able to see the trees, and I didn't want to use concrete. I couldn't afford concrete.
Correct. Right.
So what I did was I wanted the structure to be light, but at the same time protect me from, the elements of nature. So we created a structure which was based on mesh, weld mesh, not weld mesh. It was about 2 inches by 2 inches square grid, which I wrapped around as in a pyramidical form, with a skylight truncated on the flat surface. So this was my structure, and then I put the concrete. So I was learning structures.
Very experimental.
Very experimental.
Right.
And in the end, somebody, just as I was about to put the concrete, came and said, "What kind of a structure is this? This is going to fall when you remove your centering sheets." And I got scared because I had put in all my resources into it.
Right.
So I rushed to a structural engineer close by, who became a very dear friend of mine, Mr. Somdev. And then I went and told him, "Well, all the laborers have come to put the concrete, but this is what this person says. So what do I do? So please come and help me out." So he came, and he just asked me to weld a few rods, and then at the apexes,
Wherever it was crucial.
it was crucial, and he added a bit more reinforcement at the turning points, and he said, "Go ahead, this should do." So there I was. So I was able to complete that building at that cost. But of course, I used a lot of recycled material, and not that green movement was there, but I had those windows from the house.
Right.
So I took those windows, I repurposed it to suit the sizes for me, and those formed my windows. I went in for a very black terrazzo flooring, and all my furniture was made up of, my father's camp cot,
Right.
window sections, etc. Went in for a beautiful fabric, which was, which was the seats of the discussion area. It was banana fiber, and I went to Cultural Academy and got it done, and got the seats done. And when she asked me what color I wanted, I showed my nail polish and nail
Right.
varnish, and I said that pink is the color sauna
Right.
pink is what I need. And there the office was. So I did get a lot of help from recycled materials to get those costs. So I essentially spent on bricks,
Right.
and it was not an air conditioned office. I had kept all the windows open, so the breeze could come in and go out, not to mention my pets coming in
Right.
and walking out. So it was a very, very free flowing
Environment.
office
Yeah. Amazing.
environment.
Nice.
So costs, I have learnt from day one that can challenge you to bring out the best in you.
Right.
So,
But I think while you started this entire sort of journey with this particular office and were so bound by the costs, and that sort of set off a sustainability journey, cost per se is not necessarily one of those benchmarks that any of our sustainability rating systems have, right? They talk about energy, they talk about resources, they talk about materials, but it's never about, there's never a box that says, have you achieved cost efficiency,
absolutely.
right? So how did that progress?
It's so strange that it was cost and budgets that kind of prodded me into this entire journey and research into sustainable measures to be included in design. So, you do realize that if you use less number of lights, your running costs are low.
Right.
So in order to achieve lower running costs, I included glazing, lighting, skylighting, etc. So so that was a design intervention which achieved cost, but at the same time today tick boxes your lighting,
Right.
natural lighting, and the amount of lumens per square feet that you use.
Right.
So that is the way in which I used passive methods of cooling. I did not use air conditioning. Air conditioning was not common those days, but still I did not use the window air conditioner. I didn't want that closed environment for the office. So I opened it out. It was free flowing with the breeze coming in, and the windows were located in the direction, southeastern direction, so that it could bring in and then you create that little waft and goes out. So all this is using passive architecture.
Correct.
And the result today that would be looked at for green is energy efficiency and thermal efficiency. But that day, when I started it off, it was because of costs.
Understood. Nice.
So I think costs essentially were the starting point for me to understand the need to be sustainable.
I think that's fascinating because what started off as your driver, like cost efficiency was your driver, and you achieved through that lens, you managed to checkbox energy, you managed to checkbox, materials, you managed to checkbox other resources, and managed to be very efficient in all those spaces. Whereas now all our rating systems have only energy or material or water, and if you are sustainable in all of them, the byproduct of that is cost efficiency.
Yes.
But nobody is really looking at that single parameter, cost efficiency, and asking you, have you achieved 100% cost efficiency, or have you reduced it by that much? So I think now, looking at the modern day kind of work, what's very interesting for me is, while we finish doing the green building rating system, I also like to do a quick measure on ourselves to see how much lesser we've been able to make it, or what that little saving is. And I think that that's kind of what makes it feel truly and completely sustainable.
Pavitra, why don't you tell us about this office and our journey, and how we reduced costs where we had budget constraints, as well as the constraints where we had to take care of, for LEED certification.
Right. I mean, absolutely. I think it's not that much different from where you started with your first office, where versus the new office, where we were actually aspiring to be a LEED platinum rated facility. So there were obvious checkboxes that need to be done, and a very simple sort of design intervention was to look at the quantum of daylighting. And I remember going through the simulation process and the design process, and putting in the sizes of the openings, deciding where the windows were, what directions light was coming in, and all of that, and planning all of that very, very carefully, while making sure we were balancing how much radiation also came in. And always the daylighting result would throw up saying, you need more, or there are dark spots in the office or whatever. And we were striving to get 100% daylighting, because we were a platinum rated facility. So we worked really hard to get that, and we checked that box. And I think the flip side to that is, we didn't really have to install that many lights. So given that it's an office and it has a daytime usage, the lights that come on are minimal, and they don't come on before 6 p.m. So the amount of money spent to put in lighting fixtures just reduced, just fell off that budget completely.
Absolutely.
And we were able to bring in a huge amount of cost savings from day one. Not to mention that even when we are running power, we're running on less, because we don't have a lighting load there.
Absolutely.
So that's like, it's a win-win.
It's a win-win,
yeah, it's a long-term cost saving as well as a capex saving.
Absolutely.
So it's been great. So exactly, at the end of getting the platinum rating for the building, for this office that we're sitting in right now, we did the check, to just make sure that we understood that we were putting our money where our mouth was, and really talking the talk. And when we did those numbers, and we saw, because there is also this perception that it's much more expensive to build green, and you're putting in and you're putting in a lot of like devices or sensors or types of glass and things that are more expensive than conventional. So we did the math, we worked out the entire costing, and found out that we actually built for almost 8% less per square foot for a building of this quality, of an A-grade office building. And that was really a true testament to the fact that, the practice had come full circle.
Right.
We started off as being so cost conscious and cost effective, but now with the rating system sort of pushing us in all these other directions, we're able to provide such a beautifully comprehensive solution to a sustainable product.
Yes. And still reduce at reduced costs.
Right. So when we started doing Design Divas, it is to try and engage with the architectural community at large. So please be sure to like or comment on the video below, so that we continue getting feedback and knowing that we're reaching our audience in the way that we are hoping to.
Absolutely.
So like, share and subscribe.